A casualty officer typically goes to the home very early in the morning and waits for the first lights to come on. And then he knocks on the door. Typically, the mom and dad will answer, wife. And if there is a wife, this is happening in 2 different places. If the parents are divorced, 3 different places. And the casualty officer proceeds to break the heart of a family member and stays with that family until, well, for a long, long time, even after the internment. So that's what happens. Who are these young men and women? They are the best 1% this country produces.
To more on White House Chief of Staff, former General John Kelly's emotional and personal defense of President Trump's phone call, a condolence call this week to the widow of a slain soldier, saying the criticism of the president is unfair. We're bringing in Gold Star mother Karen Vaughn. She lost her Navy SEAL son, Aaron, killed in Afghanistan in 2011. Karen, we are so sorry for your loss. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Liz. I truly appreciate it.
So General Kelly lost his son in Afghanistan as well. What do you think of what the general said today?
I tell you, I sat down on the couch today and listened to that speech, and I literally cried 2 times during the speech because I thought he did such a beautiful job bringing it back to the reality of what it is we're witnessing when a young man comes home to American soil when he's killed afar. And, you know, I remember that knock on the door. I remember speaking to my precious daughter-in-law that morning and finding out that she had collapsed to the floor when the casualty officer showed up at her door, and her mother caught their little baby just before she hit the floor. So it was very touching to me for him to kind of center this back on the reality of what we're looking at in a moment like this and how violated a Gold Star family feels when somebody begins to try to use that for political fodder. It's just the wrong time. His words were so poignant, so beautiful.
We're standing right next to you. We're with you right now, and we thank you and your family for your sacrifice and what your son and what he went through and what you have been going through. I think that the country doesn't hear from the media enough, to your point, what Gold Star families like your own have gone through. What do you make of the Congresswoman listening in on the phone call? This is a sacred phone call, as the general said, and the Congresswoman admits that she did not hear the phone call in its entirety and yet went off and said the president did what he did, according to her claim of it. What are your thoughts about that, her listening in?
I cannot imagine a more intimate phone call ever made, and the fact that somebody would eavesdrop on it is a stunning reality. It is breaking something that's very sacred and very personal and very emotional, and to eavesdrop on it, then, you know, like my point about what Congresswoman Wilson did is not just that she spoke it out loud, what she thought about the phone call, which was rude enough, but then she dug in and just, you know, stood her ground and kept talking about it and kept giving interviews and kept tweeting about it as if there was just, you know, she accuses our president of not having any compassion for the fallen, but I'd say that, you know, she was pretty compassionless herself. She was the epitome of a lack of compassion to keep expounding on that phone call throughout the day. And I felt very much like General Kelly did. And I wish I'd lived close enough to Arlington to make that journey myself, because I think that was a very wise movie made to just go and have some reverent silence among those who have fallen, whose bodies have been, as he said, packed in ice and brought back to the United States with meticulous care and meticulous love to greet those of us that are now left behind.
Yeah, and you know, he has said, General Kelly, and by the way, he rarely talks about the loss of a son. He said, you know, these men and women, they have it in their DNA not to run, and they serve into eternity. And President Trump, according to General Kelly, sat down with him and said, how should I handle this phone call? How should I do it? Do you think the president meant well when he made this condolence phone call?
Absolutely. You know, I really appreciated General Kelly explaining to the nation that the president had come to him for guidance about that call, because I can't fathom a more difficult call for a commander-in-chief to make than to the primary next of kin of a fallen hero. And the fact that he sought counsel for it just tells me even more than I already knew. I already knew so much about this president's character and the way he loves and respects the military, a president who's done more for the military in the first 10 months of his presidency than I've seen happen in over a decade. So to think that he stood and took the time to find out what to say from somebody who had actually experienced that phone call or that knock on the door just tells me even more deeply how reverent his heart was toward this family and toward this beautiful young widow who I just want to say, first off, I just grieve so deeply with this family because their new reality is a world that none of us ever want to experience. And yes, he had utter reverence for her to seek counsel on what he should say. Absolutely.
Karen Vaughn, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we are so sorry for your loss, and we honor you and your family's service and your son's sacrifice and your sacrifice. Thank you so much.